9:12 a.m., July 14, 1944, 3 miles outside Saint-Lô, France. Oberleutnant Hans Vogel leans against the cool 3-foot-thick granite wall of a Norman farmhouse. He sips lukewarm chicory coffee from a tarnished tin cup. To his left, a seasoned gun crew adjusts the belt on an MG42, the Hitler's buzzsaw. From this elevated vantage point, Vogel doesn't see a battlefield, he sees a laboratory. He has mapped every square inch of the wheat field below. He is a professional, a veteran of the siege of Sevastopol, and he knows that as long as he holds this high ground, he is an untouchable god of the infantry. In the next 40 seconds, Hans Vogel would cease to exist. 300 yards away, hidden in a slurry of liquid manure and gray Norman clay, Private Elias Thorne is shivering. He isn't holding a Garand or a Thompson. He is cradling a blackened 3-foot length of industrial steam pipe, its edges jagged and burnt. He is a ghost in a ditch, ignored by his commanders and despised by his sergeant. This is the story of a weapon that shouldn't have worked, a soldier who wasn't supposed to lead, and a moment of improvised violence that flipped military doctrine on its head. It was a device explicitly forbidden by the War Department until it leveled a fortress and the time it takes to draw a breath. Elias Thorne didn't learn to fight in the woods of Kentucky or the shooting ranges of Fort Benning. He learned the anatomy of pressure in the suffocating basements of Cleveland, Ohio. Before the draft board called his name, Thorne was a master steamfitter for the industrial rail yards. His world was one of high-pressure valves, fluid dynamics, and the mathematics of the weld. In the rail yards, if a pipe was off by a fraction of a degree, the resulting explosion could level a city block. He didn't just see metal, he saw vectors. He understood how weight and heat moved through a system. When he enlisted, his instructors were baffled. During basic training, Thorne was caught refining the sights on a mortar with a piece of chewing gum and a weighted string. They called him a tinkerer. They called him unorthodox. They nearly washed him out because he refused to accept that the army way was the only way to move a projectile from point A to point B. They wanted a soldier who followed the field manual. They got a man who understood the geometry of war. The Le Bijou farmhouse was a tactical nightmare. It sat atop a rise, encrusted with thick stone and reinforced with sandbags. Standard doctrine demanded a coordinated mortar strike followed by a flanking maneuver, but the 60mm mortars were useless. Their shells bounced off the steep slate roof like hail. The cost of following the official methods was written in blood. Corporal Leo Ricci, 22 from the Bronx, a former baker who could make a wedding cake out of sea rations. He died in the first 3 minutes of the assault, caught in the open while trying to set a smoke screen. He left behind a 6-year-old daughter named Maria, who would keep his last mud-stained letter in a cedar box for 60 years. Private Sam Higgins, 19, from a dairy farm in Topeka. He carried a silver pocket watch that had survived the Civil War. He was cut down while trying to suppress the farmhouse with a BAR, his blood soaking into the French soil before he could even scream for a medic. Captain Miller stood behind a stone wall, his uniform miraculously clean, his eyes glued to the field manual. "We wait for the Shermans," he barked, ignoring the fact that the tanks were 3 miles back, bogged down in the hedgerows. He was a rigid officer who believed that if a solution wasn't in the book, it didn't exist. Thorne, lying in the filth of the drainage ditch, saw the tiny flaw the West Point strategists missed. Above the farmhouse's main floor was a grain silo with a narrow ventilation slot, a gap no wider than a man's thigh. It was the only unreinforced point in the entire structure. If a shell could be dropped vertically into that slot, the explosion would be contained by the stone walls, turning the farmhouse into a pressure cooker. But a standard mortar couldn't hit it. The trajectory was too shallow. Thorne pulled a heavy, rusted steam pipe from his pack, a piece of scrap he'd scavenged from a bombed-out factory in Carrington. He had spent the night threading a firing pin into the base and reinforcing the walls with telephone wire. He crawled to Captain Miller and presented his steam pipe mortar. Miller didn't even look at it. That's a court-martial if it doesn't kill you first, Thorne. It's an unauthorized field modification. It's scrap metal. Get back in the hole. Thorne didn't get back in the hole. He went rogue. Under the cover of a brief artillery exchange, he slid further down the ditch, away from the officers, preparing to bet his life on a piece of Cleveland plumbing. The sensory details are overwhelming. The smell of fermented corn from the silo mixes with the metallic tang of Thorne's own sweat. The mud is suctioning at his boots, trying to pull him down. Thorne ignores it all. He settles the wooden base plate into the muck. 72 degrees. He doesn't need a protractor. He has the muscle memory of 10,000 pipes fitted in Ohio basements. He calculates the windage, a 4-knot cross breeze. He's 310 yards out. He slides a modified 81mm shell into the pipe. The fit is tight. He can hear the metal scraping. He knows if the weld on the firing pin fails, the pipe will turn into a pipe bomb, ending his life instantly. He exhales halfway. He holds. He pulls the wire. The pipe doesn't just fire, it screams. The kick is massive, driving the base plate 8 inches into the earth. The shell doesn't fly like a bullet. It lobs, a slow, heavy tumble through the gray sky. In the farmhouse, Oberlieutenant Vogel hears a strange, low whistling, not the sharp hiss of a sniper or the roar of a tank. He looks up. The shell clears the lip of the silo by 2 inches. It vanishes into the ventilation slot. 1 second of silence. Then the farmhouse breathes. The explosion doesn't go out, it goes down. The internal pressure blows the window frames clear across the field. The roof tiles are tossed into the air like playing cards. The MG42 falls silent. The untouchable strongpoint is gone in 40 seconds. By 10 a.m., the Americans were eating K-rations inside the ruins of the farmhouse. Thorne's illegal weapon had saved the lives of 42 men who would have otherwise died in a frontal assault. The Army eventually studied the incident. They took Thorne's math, his angles, and his lobbing technique and integrated it into the training for urban reconnaissance and bunker clearing. They called it innovative ballistics. They never mentioned Elias Thorne. In fact, he was given a formal letter of reprimand for misappropriation of scrap materials. In 1946, Thorne returned to the Cleveland rail yards. He didn't hang his uniform in the window. He didn't tell his neighbors that he had rewritten the book on infantry warfare in a French ditch. He had boilers to weld. He had a life to rebuild. He was a man who understood that in war, as in plumbing, it's not about the rank, it's about the flow. If you found this story compelling, please like this video. Subscribe to stay connected with these untold histories.